party, we like to party, party, party all night long. Party, party, we like to party, 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 never go home. Party, party, we like to party, party, party all night long. Party, party, we like to party, 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 never go home.
What's up, everyone, and welcome back to episode 22 of the Ball Talk Pod. Main thing tonight, we're going to recap the Thunder's big win in Boston, Massachusetts. The Thunder took down the Boston Celtics last night, 118-112. And they did it without one of their all-stars. Chris, I'll open the floor to you, man. What are your thoughts out of the gate?
Let's give a little clarification. Jalen Williams went down with an injury in the second Nuggets game, a hip strain, and Mark commented before the Celtics games that he did not travel with the team, and then later it came out from Shams, the insider to the NBA, said that they don't expect it to be a long injury. He could be back in as little as a week. So there's not really a fear, but we probably won't see him for a few games. Definitely not on this road trip. You think, Ben? There's no he's meeting the team in Detroit tonight to play tomorrow kind of thing.
No, I think it's pretty obvious that. So the Thunder played in Boston last night. They play in Detroit Saturday, and then have a back-to-back Sunday afternoon with the Bucks before returning home for a homestand next week. The Thunder are on the road they won't come back to Oklahoma City between games. And for this situation and where the Thunder are, we've talked before about how these games don't really matter in terms of like seeding and stuff for the Thunder, and so there's no reason to bring it back any sooner than he has to. And I mean, I think if it's a playoff situation, I don't know if he would have played last night because that would have been a quick turnaround, but I think he would have played the second or third game after.
I think he's tough enough. I think he would have played.
Well, the thing to remember, and we've had a couple injuries like Caruso, things like that. The only like big injuries for the Thunder, you get a press release from the team. So there's never been a time where there's, for example, Mark Williams, who was one of the storylines of the trade deadline for Charlotte. Last year, he just was listed as like questionable with a back injury for like 3 months in a row and never played. Like he just didn't play. And that's just not what the Thunder do. If there's something long-term with it, they get out in front of it. I mean, they released a statement on Chet the night he broke his hip. They released AJ Mitchell's turf toe thing the day he had the surgery. And same with Hartenstein and his broken hand, and even his they did announce Hartenstein's like calf strain that he had, and he only missed a week. Or 10 days, I think it was. So I'm not too concerned with Dub. I think maybe, I don't know. Clay Bennett has enough money. They can put him on a jet and get him to Detroit or Milwaukee if they really want to, but I don't see a need for it. Let the team go out. They already have a big win under their belt. I think the biggest thing that we can get into, and segueing back to the game, is the opportunity it provides others on the team, and most importantly, Chet Holmgren, to find their footing with Dub not orchestrating things for the second unit when Shea is off the court.
Yeah, I think that, with all the talk about the double big lineup being a travesty, well, that's a hard word, but being, difficult to watch and being clunky, it looked really, really good last night. The big passing, Chet threw with Hartenstein, one, maybe two oops. You felt like they were really gelling. It looked really good last night, especially on the defensive end. I felt like they were able to really contain Boston without, Kristaps.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting is when looking at on-off numbers, and I'm trying to pull it up right now, and especially their net rating, their offensive net rating is actually bonkers. Like it's like above 140, but we're defending poorly, mainly due to three-pointers. We've been giving up threes, and people have been able to make them. But and that was even before Denver. Like that's just luck.
I feel like every team has had really monster shooting nights against us. Denver specifically, And then, the Nets game, they made a ton of threes the first half. And so did who is the other team either before or after the Nets?
It was the Spurs. The Spurs
just hit a ton of threes. I feel like teams right now, and we do a good job guarding the three. I think we contest a lot better than we have in the past. But teams have just been shooting pretty well against the Thunder for whatever reason that is. So hats off to the other teams for preparing and shooting well. But some of that is shot variance and will wane back. Just like, and you looked at Boston. Boston shot in the first quarter. I know I texted you this number, but do you remember how many shots Boston took and how many shots were beyond the arc?
I don't remember like the total. I think they took 2 2-point field goal attempts and like 19 threes.
They took 26 threes in the first quarter and shot 28 total shots. Now they did take a shot in the paint and get fouled and shoot free throws.
So not a field goal attempt.
Those don't count against
field goal attempt.
Those don't account against field goal attempts. But it's an insane amount of number. At one point, I texted you and I said they were on track for 96 3-pointers. It felt like every shot they were putting up was a three, and they were making them. Like in the first half, at least. The second half, they definitely cooled off, which is what we've seen, right?
Well, it's the NBA. It's a situation where, we've seen it with the Thunder positively and negatively for the Thunder. It's a game of runs, and a lot of times, I don't know why it feels this way, and like kind of getting into how that game started. The Thunder jumped out to like a 9-10-0 lead.
Mm-hmm.
Dort had 5 quick points because Lou Dort loves games that he gets to shoot a little bit more, and the Celtics, we just got stops and made our shots, and it just so happened it was the first 2 minutes of the game, and it looked like we were off to this hot start. And like Denver did that to us 2 nights ago. It always feels like the road team tends to punch first. Like even at I feel like at Paycom, 90% of the time, the Thunder aren't the ones that get off to the 5, 6, 7 point lead early in the first quarter. Yeah. It always seems like the Thunder are the ones that are coming back from that number.
And they've talked about how important the crowds are in those moments where they have to come back. The energy they pull from the crowds, and say, especially like you're talking about on the road, they don't have that luxury, so they have to punch first, and that's a big focus for them. They came out and said, and just kind of like controlling the game after that. Yeah.
But then Boston immediately comes down and turns into 5 Steph Currys on the floor. And the game was, I'll say this, the game was 30-30 with like a 1/10 of a second left. And then Boston found a 3-point shooter, and just a stupid situation for them. Isaiah Joe had nothing to do with it at half court, and they just whacked him. Actually, it was Torrey Craig that did it, who was a deadline pickup for them, a buyout guy. He played 4 minutes last night.
So after that, he played like a minute of like garbage time.
Yeah. Like it was a terrible situation. But all that to say, road team, the Thunder get off to this big start. Celtics respond. The thing that I was most worried about, and I think you can check with almost every single Thunder account on Twitter. You can talk to almost every single Thunder fan in whatever text group you're in with your people, wherever you get your Thunder news. The lineup situation when Shai was off the court last night was going to make or break last night's game.
100%.
Because we like the whole year we've talked about, like, especially in this MVP talk, about how much Shai escalates this team to, like, when he's on the court without Chet or Dub, his net rating's like above 20, which would be like far and away the greatest net rating of all time. And that's with our 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8th best players. And so the whole thing has been like, Dub just needs to, and Dub has gotten criticism for it, basically just don't sink. Mm-hmm. Like, just stay, like, either don't give up the lead or don't get blown out. Just find a way to get Shai back into the game where it's competitive and he doesn't have to, we're down 10 points all of a sudden. that was something that was just, I was like, I don't know how we're going to do this.
I was nervous about it too. I expected a big drop off like you're talking about.
And to start the game, they did not start Hartenstein, which I tweeted out before the game that it was not the matchup for the double big because Porzingis was out. And with Boston spreading out and shooting all the threes, as we mentioned, it's hard for Chet or Hartenstein to chase. You only have, 3 guards to chase those guys around. I thought we wouldn't see it. And then all of a sudden you see Hartenstein and Chet open the second quarter, and it was glorious.
It was so nice.
It was like fun basketball. Like it wasn't even like I'm just a Thunder fan, so I enjoyed when my team scores or gets a stop. It was like an orchestra performing at Beethoven's level. Like it was beautiful. And it's crazy how many lobs those guys throw to each other after feels like we went through like 5 years of no lobs in Oklahoma City.
Yeah.
Several plays where it's usually Chet at the free throw line and he's going down and it's Hartenstein on the backside and Chet can just throw it up to him. There was even a play to start the fourth quarter, which was the same situation where Chet went to throw the lob and they blocked it. He got it back, took a dribble, threw it again.
Next off, yeah. It was remember that lead dunk that he missed, that he then got the ball back and hit a 3. It was just sort of like the luck of that was super funny to me.
But they played so well. I think Chet, I listened to several podcasts today because after a big, it was on ESPN national television. The bigger podcasts talk about you more when you're on the primetime game. Right. And obviously the Celtics are a game that even when we played them in Oklahoma City, it was on NBA TV, but that was the story of the weekend. Chet was by far the most impressive player on the court, in my opinion, which goes to show how great Shai is. Mm-hmm. It felt like a B game for Shai. He had 5 turnovers, which is very uncharacteristic. Boston was able to pickpocket him. There were a couple times where he even dribbled behind the back and he hit his leg and had to run back and get it. Not to say that he was out of control or anything, but Boston's that good defensively and they have the guards that match up pretty well with him.
Yeah.
Chet, especially after that Denver game, the second Denver game where he was non-existent and 0 of 5 from 3, you knew he was going to get a lot more opportunity tonight, but in terms of his ability to do that against a team of the caliber of the Celtics, I didn't know what was going to happen. And then he ends up 8 of 14, 3 of 6 from 3 for 23 points, 15 rebounds. He only had 1 block, but that's because the Celtics were taking so many threes. No one came into the paint.
They shot, I think, 62 overall threes. Let me see.
I think it was even more than
63. They're 20 for 63.
Mm-hmm.
And we've kind of talked around it, but they were able to win those Shai-less minutes with that double big lineup. They won the first, Shai sits the second quarter at the start and usually comes in about the 6-minute mark. He can come in earlier if, Mark thinks the game's slipping, but they were able to let him sit all that time and actually win those minutes. When Shai came back, we had a lead. And in the fourth quarter, they were able to just survive and keep it close and not let the Celtics run away. And that's just as important in times like that when you need Shai to get rest. So like you're talking about, it's really, really
I
impressive.
think we were tied going into the fourth and Shai came back into a tie game, which is a major win. I would have taken at least as long as it wasn't double digits, especially without Dub. I think Chet was massive. Even there was a play in the first half where Shai was trying to throw it to him on a cut, but he kind of threw it behind him, and Chet had to just do this crazy angle with his body to catch it. And he kind of looks over his head, and the way that he contorts his body to get the ball back above the rim from under the backboard with a 7-footer. I think it was Al Horford was standing there. It was that was one of those moments from last year that everyone was like, oh my gosh, Chet's an alien. And this year, we saw a lot of that before the injury. I mean, we've talked about it. He would have been an all-star. He would have won the Defensive Player of the Year. But we haven't seen that much since he came back from injury. But it was plays like that was like, oh my. Like if he's doing this come playoff times and hopefully into June, Thunder fans can think whatever they want because I'm not going to talk him down from it because he's been that good. The other player besides Chet that I think deserves all the flowers in this was Cason Wallace. Cason started, so he was one of the guys who got the start. Hartenstein was on the bench. We also started Wiggins, and Wiggins, who is somebody that has obviously been on fire, has a 40-point game this year. He was 0 for last night. He went 0 for 9 from the field. Still a +8 in the plus minus, but he just didn't have a shot. And that's perfectly okay. I mean, it's not his role, and those guys are going to kind of have that roller coaster situation. But him and Cason started, and what Cason did last night, one, he matches up so well with Boston because of how guard heavy they are, and he's able to size up. You know, he's only 6'4", but he's able to. I mean, even if he had Tatum on him, who's a 6'10" forward, he's not going to stop him by any means, but he's at least going to check him and make him work for a shot. And he did all of that on the other end. He blocked Jaylen Brown. Jaylen Brown was a non-factor last night, and Cason Wallace was a huge reason why. And then not only that, you move over to what he did on the offensive side of the ball. 14 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists. I mean, this is coming on the heels of the Denver game where everyone had, like, we weren't playing that well. And then all of a sudden, Cason was like, I'm still playing. I'm still doing great. He had 8 assists in the Denver game on Monday night. And it just shows the depth of this team that we're missing Dub. We haven't even talked about that Caruso was out. Caruso was out for an illness. He was questionable day of and ended up sitting. And the luxury that this team has is you're missing an all-defensive guy, at least from the past, and you're missing your second all-star. And you could argue if someone had just turned on this game and knew nothing about the Thunder, you would have thought they were whole. And that was the best version of the team because of the depth we have. Because, I mean, I'm looking at the box score now. I'm like, Kendrick Williams played great last night. There was just so many contributors across the board that obviously had to happen with Dub and Caruso out against a team to the caliber of Boston. But, I mean, Chet, Cason, Kenrich seems to match up well with Boston. I wouldn't be surprised if, I mean, he didn't even play on Monday night in Denver. But he's a guy that I think if we see Boston in the playoffs, it's like a matchup dependent thing. I think he will play a lot against Boston or teams like them. But Chris, anybody stick out to you in terms of not Shea and not Chet in terms of who helped bring on this win?
I thought Lou Dort defensively was just incredible. He played not only Jaylen Brown, but Jason Tatum to just. I know Jason Tatum had 33 points, but he wasn't always on him. They usually, he was usually on Jaylen Brown, and Jaylen Brown, like you just talked about, was just a non-factor. And without Lou Dort's like expert defense, you can see this game going a different way. And I think the defense as a whole improved in the second half. They were a lot less able to hit threes, I guess, if that's a way to say that. They were just like,
I think strategies changed. I think the strategies for both sides changed a bit in the second half. I think Mark was very okay with giving up threes and almost maybe not being as aggressive with closeouts in the first half, which is why you saw them take so many threes. And not to say that, I mean, they didn't take as many in the second half. They're the Celtics. They're always going to take a lot of threes. But you could tell the closeouts and the contests on the threes were much crisper and with more force in that second half. And I think that happens whenever you have Al Horford. He was like 4 of 5 at one point from 3. Thunder legend Al Horford. He ended up 6 of 12, but
he made like his first 3, and I was like, oh my gosh, they're just gonna make him and Derek White both made like the first 3 or 4 that they shot, and I was like, this is the night. I mean, this is just their night. There's nothing we can do. But every time I said that, I'd look at the score and we'd be up 2. It'd be like, for some reason, they were always hitting threes down. And when they, were able to take the lead, they just couldn't hit a 3 to, take that lead and extend it.
Yeah, they never had a knockout shot per se.
No.
Which is it's definitely something that the Celtics are great at with the threes that they take. And it's there's pros and cons to it because, I mean, when we saw them in Oklahoma City back in early January, they made 9 threes. Like, we were down double digits in the second half in that game, and they just couldn't hit anything. And we came back, which definitely isn't. I view it as an anomaly. I'm not gonna sit here and be like the Thunder's defense, shut them down. It's like, no, that's just shooting variance. But last night, obviously, they were hitting threes. So much so, it's kind of weird saying that they shot like 30%. But they were shooting all of these threes. I mean, there were times, and I think Boston has a Drew Holiday problem. I think he's starting to age a little bit. I mean, there were like 2 or 3 times he hit the ball with no one in front of him between him and the rim, and he dishes it out for a 3, which I know is like modern basketball, but the Celtics have like really driven in this, like, a 3's better than a 2, which, if you look, I mean, my philosophy has always been a 3's worth more points than 2.
I have told you shoot in the paint before, and you said, why?
I can't score as much in there.
That's right.
That's the bottom line.
But, I mean,
me and Joe Mazzulla have a lot in common.
If we look last night, it obviously didn't work out for him. They shot 63. That's the most threes shot in a game this year. They shot 63 threes. That's insane. They shot the most threes in a half ever, and they shot 63 threes. They started driving more in the third quarter, and I felt it was a much closer game in the third quarter. I felt like it was a much tighter back and forth game in the third quarter when they were attacking the rim and hitting closeouts. And when they started spraying from the 3 again, it just... I heard something last night, maybe it was Bill Simmons tweet or something. After the 7-minute mark, they shot 2 field goals inside the 3-pointer. Again,
the 7-minute mark in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
Because they're always hunting that kill shot, and whether that's, I wouldn't even say it's always a kill shot to like put a team away. A 3, if you make a 3 in the NBA game, especially at home, the crowd goes crazy, regardless of the score. It feels like, and so there's that momentum that just snowballs. Even like if you can hit 2 in a row, then like good luck, especially against a team that shoots it to the level that Boston does. But I mean, the third quarter definitely was more competitive. I remember thinking, like, how are we even like, we were winning at halftime. Like, I was like, this is, I wouldn't say lucky, but with how many threes that the Thunder had hit, or excuse me, how many threes the Celtics had hit, it was like, we usually, when that happens, and like we saw in the Spurs game, which we did end up winning, but when a team gets that hot from 3 and makes that many, especially that first quarter and the second or the first half altogether, you're expecting to, like, you're having to claw out of a hole.
Yeah.
But because they didn't do anything else, like you said, two attempts inside the paint or inside the 3-point line in the first quarter, there wasn't anything to like back that up. Like that was all they had. But yeah, and then the fourth quarter came, and again, like we said, that Chet Hartenstein lineup, it was a lifesaver. And I think, I don't know, I'm curious what you think of this. Obviously against Denver, it's something that I think will happen if we play Denver in the playoffs, just because of Jokic, and you have the strength of Hartenstein and the roaming of Chet and his shot blocking to hopefully bother Jokic enough. But I don't think it's a lineup that needs to be played consistently. And it's definitely one that's just being played to experiment with, because it's the one we have the least amount of data points on. And we haven't actually talked about this. What do you think?
What do I think? They'll use the 2 big lineup in the playoffs?
Well,
how much?
Like how much? Do you view it as like a lineup that you view as like, okay, we're getting this 10 minutes a game or 15 minutes a game? Or is it pretty much just situational?
I'll use a baseball reference. I think in baseball, you line up against a hitter and you'll look at their, usually when you're a pitcher, they can see where this hitter is able to hit the ball, what kind of pitches they're good at hitting. And I think in a similar manner, it'll be a curveball or a changeup to a team that is susceptible to, one or two spots in hitting, in swinging and missing a curveball. But somebody who's adept at hitting a curveball, you're not going to throw it. You're just going to keep throwing your fastball. You're going to keep that one big lineup trying to.
If they can't hit
attack.
it, why throw anything else?
Right. And you might throw a changeup every once in a while just to throw them off their game a little bit. But I don't. If the two big lineup is not working, I think Mark is smart enough to just play it. But a couple minutes, because there's times maybe they want to give like Jalen and Shea some rest, or they want to give a couple guys a rest, so they have this in their back pocket where they can survive and stay afloat. I think it's going to be situational. I think against a good team like Denver, it'll be played more than a team that runs and guns like Boston. But what do I know? Because last night against Boston, it worked really well. So,
yeah, I agree with that. I just don't think. I think when we get to the playoffs, maybe except against Denver, you're starting Chet at the 5 and Hartenstein's coming off the bench.
Right.
Just because that's your best pitch, and obviously it's a blessing and a curse that the Thunder won't know who they play in the first round until like basically 2 or 3 days before. Obviously they'll have somewhat of an idea. It'll be amongst 4 teams and then really 3 teams. Because it's the winner of the 9-10 game and the loser of the 7-8 game play the Thunder. But
yeah, but like you said, like of the 4 teams, like the only team I could see the double big lineup being really effective against, or something that the Thunder need to play, would be a fully healthy Mavericks team. But
with
who
Luka?
knows? No, I think Anthony Davis and Chet would go like. You put Chet on Anthony Davis, and you have.
I would honestly, obviously it doesn't matter because Dallas, I think, doesn't want to win a game the rest of the year. I think if that was the situation, you'd have Hartenstein on AD and Chet on the other 5 as like a rover, hopefully.
Okay.
But just because I think AD's when you play him with physicality, he tends to struggle a bit more. But again, it doesn't matter. But yeah, I mean, huge win for the Thunder. The biggest thing, not the biggest thing, but an important thing, they did clinch a playoff spot last night. And they're the first team in the Western Conference to do it.
They can't go below the 6th seed is what that means. They don't even have, regardless if we lose every game and every team wins the rest of the season, we will be in the 6th seed in the playoffs. We won't have to play in the play-in.
Correct. And one thing that I like that the NBA does, the 7, 8, and 9, 10 games, you only get like credit for making the playoffs if you advance out of the play-in.
Right.
Like technically the Thunder did not make the playoffs 2 years ago. Whenever we lost, we won the first play-in game and then lost to the Wolves to be the 8th seed. That technically does not count as a playoff appearance, even though you were playing additional basketball, which I like the play-in tournament, but I also like that you're still respecting that like top 8 seed thing to get that credit. But it's pretty impressive. I saw the Thunder have the 2nd most playoff appearances since 2012 for a team that was the black eye of the league in the middle of all that. And
yeah,
I mean, it just is what they've built and what they've continued to build and the sustainability of it. And not just the sustainability, but the ability to hit a hard reset arguably twice when you lose KD and then when you trade off PG and Russ and you're still relevant. You're not like, I mean, when's the last time the Charlotte Hornets were on ESPN or any other national broadcast?
Never. It's such a blessing to cheer for the Thunder. It really is.
Yeah. But
because they have a vision and they have a guy at the helm who can take you out of these, who like understands that there will be down times, but he's built something that can rise from the ashes like a phoenix very, very quickly.
Phoenix would love to have this Phoenix.
Yes.
But
I was thinking more Dumbledore's Phoenix Fox.
Oh, I know, but I'm saying the Suns, who have just been abysmal recently, and that's a team that's not having fun playing basketball, would kill for this.
Yes.
But yeah,
I also want to give a shout out. I thought Doris Burke last night was awesome. Every time they like called a foul on Jaylen Brown, there was like, you could hear boos in the stadium, but it felt like they'd show a replay and she'd be like, that's obviously a foul. Like, you just can't do that. Or even like the foul on Jaylen Isaiah Joe. Well, the Isaiah Joe foul where at half court, she was like,
oh yeah,
obviously that's a foul. You just like, he hit him on the arm. There's clear contact. You can't do that.
You can't not call that one. That one was so obvious.
It felt very refreshing to be like, somebody's like, you can't, like, they're not foul baiting. It's very evident. And I really appreciated her. I thought she did a great job.
Well, I even appreciate, this might be the biggest takeaway from the Celtics game. Celtics fans were trying to join in on this free throw merchant idea of Shea.
Pretty rampant last night on social media.
Yeah, but then people would post clips, and not even like Thunder accounts, like other accounts would be like, dude, this is a foul.
Yeah.
I don't know what you're wanting me to look at. Like, it's not even Thunder fans. It was like, you're making the case for us.
Right.
There was a play that Shea drives in and Brown has his hand on his arm and Shea just lifts his hand.
Right.
And I get like the way that he lifts his hand, it almost looks like it's the Harden, like where he's trying to like hook it. But where Brown's hand was, it's like obviously a foul.
Yeah. And they were also, last night, I think you're about to continue, but I think they were also trying to make like the free throw disparity. We shot like 30 something free throws and they shot like 12 or something. And they were trying to make like, oh, that's interesting that the Thunder shot a lot more free throws. First off, the Thunder are like 25th.
We're last in the league in free throw,
we're last in the league in like free throw discrepancy and like free throw attempts. We're around the last in the league. But then they're like you're talking about other accounts besides Thunder accounts being like, they shot 63 threes. If you don't attack the basket, you're not going to get foul calls. Like, yeah. And I get that, like, every NBA game against every team, there are going to be questionable foul calls because the refs are human. They're not going to see everything in real time.
And it's the best, fastest players in the world were like real time. Good luck.
And they've learned tricks throughout the years to get foul called. Like, I totally get that every game, and the Thunder do it, Boston does it. Everyone gets beneficial calls, right? But to say that they're like this huge foul discrepancy was due to like the Thunder just like grifting fouls and like the refs being on their side when Boston shot 63 threes and they only shot two buckets inside the arch the last 7 minutes of the game is a ridiculous thing. And then people, non-Thunder fans, coming to the rescue, I feel like.
Well, it's the argument that Mark made at the beginning of the year, where it's like, statistically, we drive far and away more than any other team in the NBA. And we're not getting to the free throw line. And it's started to correct a little bit. Like, Dub had 11 free throws against Denver on Sunday, which was a career high. But it's the exact argument that he was making, in that we drive a lot. Why are we not getting to the free throw line?
Yeah, it's a visual representation.
And it's on Twitter and X and just in general NBA fans. There are fans that watch the game and fans that watch YouTube highlights and check box scores.
Or and just even Twitter clips. We'll just watch like Twitter clips someone else posted.
Yeah, they're like, okay, they only shot 12 free throws. The refs screwed them.
Yeah.
When would the NBA ever want a team from Oklahoma City to have the upper hand on a team from Boston?
The team who's won the most NBA championships of all time.
Yeah. One of the top two like recognizable franchises in the sport, and probably like regardless of sport.
But I'd say
the Lakers are bigger, but the Celtics are not that
Far behind.
And so that all that stuff is so dumb to me that they like, oh, the refs favor Oklahoma City. Stop. But I don't know. It's just been nice to see on Twitter the last couple nights, or at least last night and tonight, that everyone that's trying to make a big deal out of Shea and what he's been doing is kind of just overblown.
Right, 100%. If you watch the games, you understand he gets fouled a lot more, and then he does get beneficial calls, right? But he does get fouled a lot more. And like even like the bucket last night, he crosses up Jaylen Brown. Jaylen Brown goes to the left. He sees Al Horford kind of just like standing over there, so he drives right at Al Horford. Al Horford doesn't really make a move, so he goes and makes like a really tough bucket where he falls on his hiney. And it's like they didn't call a foul on that, and that was probably a foul.
Yeah. They're not going to call everything.
He makes his living from like the mid-range shots that he doesn't get fouled on, like those turnaround shots. So it's just it's obvious that people who like say all that just don't watch Thunder games. And like I'm not going to sit here and say like I think that Anthony Davis or Steph Curry or LeBron James or Luka grift fouls, because I don't watch enough of their games to understand their playing style to really say that they do anything that other players aren't doing. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's so weird too, because people are like, well, this isn't gonna like keep up in the playoffs. Like they don't call all these fouls. And it's like, one, for the team that fouls more than anybody in the league, great.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Like the Thunder foul a lot on defense because they play a really tough node style of defense. So like they don't call fouls in the playoffs. That's going to benefit the Thunder on defense probably more than it benefits them on offense to get those foul calls.
I wouldn't even say probably, because the thing that bugs me about all that, it's people think that because the Thunder lost last year in the semifinals to Dallas, in a game that both teams scored the exact amount of points, like we were a one foul away from going to a Game 7 in Oklahoma City. Shea was by far the best player in that series.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, then PJ Washington was second because Luka was getting the Lu Dort treatment, and Kyrie
the Lu
was fine.
flu.
Yeah, honestly, that's a great thing. That's a great way to put that. Like Shea just that game 4 in Dallas last year, where it was like we have to win this one. It wasn't free throws; it was his mid range that he was generating whatever he wanted. He was hitting shots literally behind the backboard. He was just making shots. He's the best shot maker in the league right now. And that's what translates to the playoffs. We talk about shot variance because that's what happened to the Thunder last year against Dallas. We didn't shoot well, our role players didn't, and Dallas's did. And that's what it's going to come down to this year too, but you'd like to think that a team that has another year of experience, you have Caruso, you have Hartenstein, that they're in a better position to support Shea.
Right.
Because in today's NBA, you can't go win it with one star. He can't take you to a play. It's not like Dirk's the last one that probably will ever do that with how talented and the depth of talent in the NBA.
Yeah.
So
I would say that most of those voices are these super loud, obnoxious voices on ESPN who don't care what they say, and they're just saying stuff for clicks, like Stephen A. Smith and Kendrick Perkins. All these people just like who probably know a lot more about basketball than I do, but they just say whatever they're thinking, and most of the time I find it hard to believe because nothing they ever say really comes true.
The dumbest thing Stephen A. Smith has said this week, mainly about the Oklahoma City Thunder, that's all I've read. I'm sure he said other stuff. He was talking about how like he's the stereotypical, like one day he'll say like, who can catch the Thunder? The Thunder are the best team, da-da-da-da-da. And then the next day he's like, oh, they're too young. I don't trust them. They're not going to get it done this year. And he said it in a interview where he also was referencing him, like LeBron confronting him, which is, he's like saying all this stuff. Like that's a whole other thing. It's like, dude, no one cares. But he was talking about how he's like, well, I get really high on the Thunder, like, big win in Boston last night, and they look great. And then I'll watch them the next night, and they lose. So I'm like, well, I don't trust them. They've lost 12 times all year. Like, he only watched, I guess, the 2 Denver games, or whatever. He's been very strategic on the 12 times that he's watched the Thunder, and it's, again, goes to show, even going back to what I said about the Celtics, the NBA is not going to do anything to favor the Thunder in any way over a team like Boston or LA or whatever. They're just not gonna give the respect to a small market team until they go and do it. And honestly, Boston wasn't getting the respect that they deserved last year, and even the last 4 or 5 years, just because they didn't win a championship.
Right.
So that's like my biggest want, besides just a championship in general, is to go win it this year. Because then I wouldn't say it's all cake after that, but it's all like you're building a dynasty. You're not trying to like prove that what we're doing is working.
Right. 100%. People, it's not about if it'll work. It'll be like, can they, like, then it's just all about like playing hard and playing well that year. It's not about like the future and the process that we've gotten here. Are they too young? There's no questions about if they can do it. The questions are about their play on the court, which I find more interesting than these talking heads screaming how they're too young and don't have enough playoff experience.
Even after a game like last night, where obviously they go in, I think Shea makes an MVP statement, which further solidifies, like we talked about it. The only way that Jokic really could have overtaken Shea is if he dominated both of those games and they won it and Shea played bad the rest of the year. Because now there's no opportunity for Jokic to go beat Shea. And there's 17 games left on the Thunder schedule. There's just not enough opportunity to go overtake that. But Shea went and took it. He went and won it. But they just have to go do it in the playoffs. And not just in the playoffs. I think if they don't make it to the finals, even if you get to a Western Conference Finals, you're going to get a lot of backlash, and Thunder fans will feel it even without getting on Twitter.
But that is like any team who's like trying to win a championship, right? They have this expectation. You don't think Boston, if they don't make the finals, it's going to be like, well, what are we, another year of like not making the finals?
They'll be fine though, because they won it last year.
I totally understand, but like, you don't think the Cavs probably aren't feeling the same because they kind of came out of nowhere, but like, with this expectation comes the feeling that you have to do something, right? And until you do it, it's hard. And I think we need to acknowledge that there is still questions about if they can do it because they haven't done it. And I totally get what they're saying, but to totally dismiss them because they haven't done it is crazy to me.
Yeah, and it's fine. Again, like I've even like mentally had to be like, don't get worked up over this. None of it matters. But because we don't have ammo. There's no ammo to prove them wrong until you go and do it. Right. And even though we say this is a biased pod, like that's reality, and I'm fine with that. If we don't win it this year, it's a disappointment, but I mean, it's a letdown every year until we do. So,
it's an awesome responsibility to have those expectations for a team like this. And I think they really internalize those expectations and are like trying their very hardest, which is all we can ask from them in the end, is for them to go lay all they have on that court to try to bring a championship back to Oklahoma City. If they don't, it'll be sad, but as long as they give it their all, I'm not going to be disappointed.
No. It's all a crapshoot, and shot variance is a thing, as we've said, but it'll be interesting. But yeah, Thunder beat the Celtics last night, and I would say probably they're like one of the top 2 or 3 wins of the year, especially without Dub. There's a couple others I think that are better. But really impressive on national television. Shea's back in the limelight. His MVP odds are spiking, which is awesome to see. They continue this road trip. They go to Detroit on Saturday. Who's shockingly enough going to make the playoffs this year.
Six seed.
Detroit
is a fun team. I'm excited to see what they bring to offer. The Fighting Cade Cunninghams, OSU. I wouldn't say alumni. I don't think you graduated.
They'll say like alma mater, but it's really not. It's really not.
So Cade Cunningham is on there. OSU star. Is he originally from Oklahoma?
He's from Dallas.
Oh, he's from Dallas. He's playing really well this year. Poised to kind of like take a bigger role, be an all-star.
He's going to win Most Improved Player.
For sure.
I don't think he should, but he will.
Who do you think should win the Most Improved Player?
I think it's dumb that a player that was drafted first overall 3 years ago can win Most Improved Player. It should go to players that like Norman Powell this year has turned into a borderline all-star from like just a role player. Like it should go to the guys that really build up their career, not come in with all these expectations and all of a sudden, the number 1 overall pick has a decent team around him and he's really good. It's like, no, his circumstance just changed. It should go to like people that actually build up their career from the bottom up.
I get that, but in the same manner, he could have built his career in those 3 years, right?
Yeah, he was just hurt all the time.
Right. I get that, but there's still some people who like take a backseat and take a step back and are unable to like produce, but then 1 year it just clicks and it could have been drafted overall. I don't want to say that like it should go to somebody who wasn't drafted in the first round.
Yeah, that's fair. I don't know.
They're a fun team. They're 37-30. They lost last night to somebody. Let me see.
Washington.
They lost last night to the Wizards.
They beat them by 20 the game before.
That's crazy. Washington, the worst team in the league.
But
still not from the playoffs. Washington
because the East is so bad. The East is so bad. But
it should be a really fun game. Tune into that one. Just see what the pace Detroit has to offer. I remind people the Thunder have only lost 1 game against the East this year. It was the first game against the Cavaliers.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they should be pretty good.
Yeah, should be a fun game, and then you roll into a back-to-back at Milwaukee on Sunday night. That one's actually on ESPN, the late slate, because ESPN's now turned their Sundays, the football's over, into an all-day basketball affair, which has been great. But yeah, couple big games against the Eastern Conference leading into the 76ers in Charlotte next week at home. So you get the best of the Eastern Conference, and you get the ones trying to plant their flag in the draft lottery.
Yes.
But we'll see when Dub comes back. I think, like I said, with the Sixers and Hornets next week, I think if it was a big matchup, you could see him come back for the first game back after the road trip, if it truly isn't as bad as people have been saying. But both those teams are tanking, and you have a good enough team. Just get them to the playoffs healthy. Is the bottom line. So yeah, we'll see what happens there. We got, even on top of NBA, before we go, I didn't even tell Chris this, but I got to give a shout out to the Oklahoma Sooners.
Shout out!
The Oklahoma Sooners are going to go dancing this year in the NCAA tournament, which 2 weeks ago, I was ready to donate to the GoFundMe to get Porter Moser fired.
I still think he should be fired.
I don't think anymore. Man, they have played they're playing Kentucky right now, who's nationally ranked. We should have beat them in Norman a couple weeks ago. They're just playing good basketball, and it's not even, it's college. We talked about this. It's not necessarily good basketball, but the hard hustle hardwood. I mean, they're crushing it. I mean, they've been down. They fight back. They've won 3 in a row to basically clinch an NCAA tournament spot. Jeremiah Fears is playing like an NBA draft pick again, which has been huge.
Mm-hmm.
So much so I'm kind of worried he's going to actually go to the draft. I'd love to see him come back for a sophomore year. The Sooners have, a 4-star center coming in next year, which I've been saying forever. OU never feels like they have an actual enforcer down there. But I mean, we'll see if they can pull this out against Kentucky. Obviously, we're not going to pod for the next hour until that game's over.
15 minutes.
Yeah, 15 basketball minutes.
Right
But-
now, with 15 minutes left, it's 46-45. Sooners up 1.
So we'll see if they can pull it out. Be pretty crazy if they could, especially after the bad blood in Norman when we lost that game. But there's your OU shout. I know we haven't been talking OU much recently, and we need to get back into that with spring
Not much
football
going
starting
on,
up.
though.
But it's going to be crazy to see them in the tournament, and hopefully they can continue this run.
It'd be cool to see a old school Porter Mosier Final Four with this team.
Sign me up. Sign me up. But with that, I think we're going to get out of here tonight. Thunder won big. Sooners are on a roll. It's a great time for basketball in the state of Oklahoma. But we appreciate everybody who's listening. Give us a follow on Twitter, X, Spotify, wherever you're listening. But appreciate everybody, and we'll talk to y'all next time. See you.
See you guys.
All night long. Party, party, we like to party, party, party.